Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
This is Under the Dome, the News and Observer Politics podcast for the week of April 18th. I'm Vaughan, here with Doran, and we are almost exactly a month out from the primary. And the big news, well, maybe it's big news, maybe it's not. That's what we'll figure out. We'll discuss anyway, are endorsements and how much weight they carry and they don't carry. The latest endorsement, as of the time we're recording this, is in the North Carolina Congressional District 4 race, which includes State Senator Valerie Foushee, who was just endorsed by the Congressional Black Caucus. She already had the endorsement of retiring Representative Butterfield, whose district at one point included part of Durham, but is a solidly Eastern North Carolina district now. And this NC4 includes parts of Durham County, Orange County, and a little bit of the counties north of that. So, Will, what do you think on something like this, as far as, is this their specific endorsement? Is this a message sending? What do you think of something like the Congressional Black Caucus endorsing a candidate? Of course, it's Foushee's, there are more than one African-American candidates in that race, but Foushee's probably the front runner, I would say, of the race.
Yeah, she's certainly the most established Black candidate in that race, and I mean, this is a huge primary. Like you said, it's Durham and Chapel Hill, so whoever wins this primary is going to win the election. They're going to go to Congress, pending some massive unforeseen circumstances in the future. So this primary is going to determine who represents this area in Congress, and David Price is retiring after 30 years, so there has been this scramble. There's, half a dozen or so people on the Democratic side all running for this. The Congressional Black Caucus stepping in and endorsing Foushee is big. This is an area with a large minority population and particularly a large and politically plugged in Black population. So
not the minority, actually, not in this case, right?
I think it might still be a majority white district.
Right, the whole district. Durham itself is more kind of even Steven.
Yeah, and the Democratic primary itself might be majority Black in terms of the voters who show up. It's at least close. But so for that reason, the Congressional Black Caucus endorsing in that race is huge. The interesting thing is that retiring Representative Price has not made an endorsement. He doesn't really seem to have a hand-picked successor that he's backing, or at least none that he said yet. And like you said, we're a month out, so it's kind of do or die time here. You would think that if he did plan to endorse somebody, he already would have done so.
I think he told our colleague Brian Murphy that he wasn't planning to endorse, but that was several months ago now. So that might not be the case anymore, depending on, I'm sure the candidates are calling him and asking, and I'll go ahead and plug our voter guide that we'll have in the Sunday print N&O on, I think it's April 24th. And we're all doing a variety of stories, and then the candidate questionnaires we'll post online too at the same time. And I'm writing about the NC4 race, and I've talked to different Democrats, and a lot of it that they're saying is it's going to depend on turnout. So is Foushee going to win because of turnout? The other thing, since we're talking about endorsements, is that former presidential candidate and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren made a big endorsement about a week or so ago, depending on when you're listening to this, for NIDA alum, who's also running in that District 4 race. And NIDA is a Durham County commissioner who I've covered since before she was in elected office, when there was an open seat that she wasn't the one that was ultimately picked for it on Durham City Council, and then she ended up on the Durham Mayor's Council for Women, and then ran for county commissioner. And her background in the party was working for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and that's kind of the progressive tension, I think, in Durham anyway, is and I've asked people, I'm like, is this a fair way to describe it? The Biden Democrat versus the Bernie Democrat, where's Elizabeth Warren fit in there? And, one of the people I talked to in the story is someone who was a Warren delegate and then an alum supporter. So what's the crossover there? And specifically at play in Durham is there, like we've mentioned, you mentioned that, Durham, that the district is blue, Durham itself is very, very blue. And there is, of course, it's still all Democrats, but their recent municipal election kind of shifted a little bit, which could have been a one issue election. It could have been a sign of like what voters want or what voters turn out. But the other factor in that race anyway is that there's no top, because Sherry Beasley is going to win the primary. I mean, again, with the caveat, like something happens, but the Democrats have already decided she's winning the Democratic primary for Senate. So there's not that top ticket, get out the vote driver for the congressional races or really the legislative races. So maybe endorsements are the way to push that a little bit. So of course we're all looking at the Republican Senate primary and endorsements there. So let's talk about that some.
Yeah, I mean that's another case, where you have, two very different camps. One kind of more establishment and one kind of more base candidate, similar to the 4th District Congressional. But in the Republican Senate primary, really the front runners are Ted Budd and Pat McCrory. And
aren't they both base and establishment, I guess, even though they try to tell each other that they're not? Right?
Sure. But I think the way that they have kind of portrayed themselves, and I think, McCrory always, back even before he was governor of the state, when he was the mayor of Charlotte, always portrayed himself as kind of on the more moderate side of Republicans. And he was a, Republican elected in Charlotte, which, is now a very deep blue part of the state, but, was more of a light blue, almost light red at times area.
But wasn't he known more as a moderate mayor and not so much as governor?
Yeah, I think that's probably a topic for a whole other podcast that we could talk about. But yes,
you can tell us if you want what you think about that.
Yes, I think once he became governor, he kind of moved to the right with the state legislature. I think the state legislature was kind of the median GOP lawmaker was much more to the right of McCrory, and he kind of moved with them once he became governor. But that he did not go far enough right to earn Trump's endorsement. That went to Ted Budd. And that came a long time ago in this race, last June, when Trump was here for the GOP state convention. I actually covered it. It was out in Greenville, and Trump made this surprise announcement during the convention. No one really even knew, even up to about 20 minutes before his speech, who he was going to pick to endorse. He ended up endorsing Ted Budd. And obviously that was a big boon for Budd, but he didn't really see a huge bump in the polls for a while. So some people were kind of scratching their heads about that, both in the state and also nationally. I mean, you saw, reporters in DC kind of using this Senate primary to question, like, how much weight does, Trump's endorsement still carry anymore?
It did get a more national media. It got Budd more national media attention.
Absolutely. And I mean, you have to remember, Pat McCrory is someone who's been involved in state politics for a couple decades, as mayor of the state's biggest city, then as governor, now as Senate candidate. And, Ted Budd has really only been around since 2016. That was the first time he was elected to Congress. And so McCrory really had the lead for a while, even for well after Trump endorsed Budd in that race. All of the polling, which, it was mostly internal polling from the two campaigns, which you always have to take with a grain of salt. But, even the Budd camp's polling for a while was still showing McCrory with the lead. But now, we've gotten sort of our first real polls of the race, and Budd does seem to be out in front. It took a while. It took 7 or 8 months. The
thing about those polls, though, is there are so many undecided voters. Are the undecided Republicans just the ones who are going to wait until they get there and then decide, or are they not going to vote at all? Are they still deciding? Because Budd, I mean, how big is his name recognition statewide versus McCrory? Probably not. Or maybe it has reached that level now.
Yeah, I think it's getting there. I don't know if it was necessarily 100% the Trump endorsement that did that. I think really what's helped him out is there's a group called Club for Growth that has just put millions and millions and millions of dollars behind Bud, mostly in TV ads, actually just attacking Pat McCrory for being too liberal, ever since the Trump endorsement came out. So, even if like the endorsement itself didn't necessarily like create this like seismic shift in the GOP electorate, what it did was signal to the PACs like Club for Growth that, okay, here's the guy that we want to put the money behind. And so that really, after months of, millions of dollars in ad spending, I think his name recognition is getting up there towards, the level of Pat McCrory's. And they've also been successful in, causing a lot of Republican voters who very happily voted for McCrory twice or even 3 times for governor. I mean, remember, he's run 3 different times for governor. There's probably a lot of people who've supported him in plenty of primaries before who are now, as you said, undecided, because they've liked McCrory in the past, but now they're seeing all these ads that are slamming him and they're big Trump fans. And Trump says, actually, this other guy, Ted Budd, is better, but they might not know that much about Ted Budd because he is, pretty much a newcomer. His district is kind of out in sort of just a rural part of the state, kind of around the Triad area. So, he's not really been like a huge media market in the past. He's been in Congress for a few years, but hasn't really made a ton of waves as a congressman, hasn't gotten a lot of recognition.
So Bud and McCrory they're both established. They're established politicians that have been in like either statewide or federal government.
Yes, and they're both running as the outsider.
They're absolutely not the outsider.
Neither of them is an outsider at all.
They've been elected by the state. They're not an outsider. But Bud could theoretically be seen as a newcomer from, like you were saying, like the people that don't know him. So they're like, here's somebody new. I don't want someone else again. But the other thing with endorsements is maybe that matters a lot to the party faithful, or maybe it doesn't. But the other thing about this primary is that now we have the largest voting bloc in the state are unaffiliated voters. We've written about this before, and the unaffiliated voters do tend to follow the same voting patterns of where they are, like the rest of their district, but they also don't like the parties. They don't like being told how to vote, but they also don't particularly like the parties, even if they'll vote for one or the other. And when you get to choose what ballots you want in North Carolina when you're unaffiliated. So unaffiliated voters could swing a little bit for maybe just because like things are so close in the state that maybe those endorsements will count just a little, but just enough. And the same thing for, unaffiliated voters voting, before or against. The other thing we were talking about with endorsements that we hadn't mentioned yet on the congressional races is Josh Stein, the Attorney General, has endorsed Valerie Foushee, which is interesting because part of it could be that she's a state senator, and generally with a party, you kind of like whoever your incumbent is already, which I'll segue to another endorsement factor that didn't play in that way. What do you think you've covered Stein for a while, and we all know that he's probably running for governor too in a few years. So why do you think he would endorse Foushee? Or maybe they know each other? Yeah,
they know each other. He was a state senator before he became attorney general, and so they served together in the Senate. Obviously, she represents Chapel Hill, and while Stein doesn't live in Chapel Hill now, he grew up there and still has obviously ties to the area. So I think there's plenty of reasons why he would have chosen to endorse her. I'm sure some of the other candidates would have preferred to endorse them. But it's been interesting, while you've seen some of these endorsements, pouring in this 4th district race, whether it's for Nina Alam or for Valerie Foushee, you really haven't seen the same rush from the Democratic establishment to pick a candidate in the 13th district primary.
I was just thinking that, right? Wiley Nichols, Sam Searcy, current senator and former. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the district that is kind of the Wake County suburbs, like Western Wake from Cary down through Apex, Holly Springs, Fuquay, and then into Johnston County. And then it's got parts of Harnett and Wayne, I think, as well. And maybe even part of Sampson.
A little bit.
It's mostly a Wake in Johnston district, with a couple other sort of rural agricultural areas scattered in there. And so, yeah, like you were saying, Don, it's Wiley Nickel and Sam Searcy, both, kind of younger, up-and-coming white guys from the Wake County suburbs who either currently serve or used to serve in the state Senate. So on paper, very similar candidates. And there really hasn't been a rush from the Democrats to endorse in that primary.
Well, how do you pick? Because both Nickel and Cersei are state. I mean, Fushi, maybe she was an easier given because she's a sitting state senator, and yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe they're not sure like how it would play if they chose one or the other. Nickel's still in the Senate, and he still has votes this year. So, since we're talking about the state Senate, let's also talk about a big endorsement news on the legislative level that came, I think it's been about a month ago now, which was a surprise. And we were all like, wait, what? Where Governor Cooper endorsed the opponent of a sitting Democrat, Kirk Deviere,
which you never see happen.
No, I'm like, is this a story? Oh, yeah, this is a story. I've written a couple stories about it. Representative Billy Richardson had a lot of things to say. He said it was a mistake, that Cooper absolutely shouldn't have done that. It's just a sort of a breach of protocol where you endorse, people that are already sitting and running for re-election. And why would the governor care about a primary? And so the party line, as it were, is that mentioning teacher raises and Medicaid expansion, which of course were two major budget issues, and Deviere was one of the state budget conferees, but so were a lot of other people that are running. So it's interesting that he was the target of being both, as a verb, being primaried, and then also that the governor would endorse an opponent in that particular district. So we'll see if that was a smart or not a smart play on the governor's part. If Deviere wins the primary anyway, generally you want like the caucus to support you and sustain all your vetoes, which could play into why this happened, because Deviere did vote with Republicans sometimes, but so did others. So did Senator Paul Loeb, who's running for re-election, Senator Ben Clark, who's actually running for Congress. And who is the fourth one that I'm forgetting? Senator Don Davis, who's also running for Congress. So we could be looking at who is still around that you can try to send a message to next session. And speaking of Don Davis, he is running against former state senator Erica Smith. They all sit in the same row in the Senate, which is right, like where I always sit in the press area behind and watch all of them. But anyway, Elizabeth Warren endorsed Erica Smith in that race. So that was a surprise to me anyway, that, I knew just before that she was endorsing the alum, and then to see the announcement and that it was Erica Smith too. So we'll see if that carries any weight with voters in that primary.
Yeah, it was interesting to see some DC folks kind of get involved in these races. And I mean, well, obviously, it's races for Congress, so they're trying to say, hey, I'd like to work with this person in Congress. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much weight those actually carry. Something to watch here.
All right, so we've brought it back a little sporadically, and we're going to again this time headliner of the week, which Twitter responses told me that you guys missed and want back. So Will and I have not even discussed this before as we're talking what our headliners of the week will be, so I'm just going to throw mine out there first.
Please do.
That's more of a phrase. My headliner of the week, and we don't vote because there's only two of us. We just share what we think it is. I'm going to say North Carolina and election season. Everyone likes to talk about North Carolina being politically purple, and it went for Obama, it went for Trump, it's this and that. But lately, it's not gotten the same national interest. Like maybe it's not as much of a factor in play, but we're still here, and obviously a place that national politicians like to come because former President Trump was just here, and as we record this on Thursday, President Biden should be arriving any second in North Carolina. So North Carolina still gets attention in campaign season. So that's my headliner, our state and campaign season. What's yours?
All right. Well, I think I'll go with actually something a little related, which is inflation. The big boogeyman. It's what Biden was really here to talk about. Ostensibly he was talking about, some of the states, big wins with attracting factories and things like that. But, he was giving a speech at HBCU, at NCA&T, and talking about, his administration's plans to deal with inflation. So it's, even though it was, on paper, technically a White House event, I think it was also pretty much a campaign event, with him coming out to the Democratic base and saying, hey guys, we got this under control. We've got a plan for this, kind of in damage control mode, honestly. And, if inflation continues to be an issue through the summer into the fall, then, it could really hurt a lot of the Democrats who are running for some of these congressional seats, whether it's for the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate, even though it's something that, is really completely out of their hands. Obviously people, will vote, based on how the economy is doing at the time. So, I think that's really a large reason why Biden was here, was to kind of rally the base, as election season is getting started here, and, try to, make sure that Democrats don't have a large voter fall off in November. Obviously this podcast is all about the primary, right. But I think a lot of people are already looking forward to November.
Maybe they'll probably be back.
Oh, I think he'll be back several times. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening. For the News and Observer, I'm Vaughan with Doran, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.